My dear friends, let me tell you about something that happened in our Houston neighborhood that changed everything we thought we knew about the people living right next door. This was 3 years back, when my arthritis wasn't quite so bad and I could still manage my morning walks. You know how it is in those old neighborhoods. Everybody knows everybody. Folks still bring casseroles when someone's sick, and we all pretend not to notice things we ought to notice. That's the trouble, isn't it? Sometimes being polite and minding our own business lets evil grow right under our noses. What Sarah Mitchell found that Tuesday morning behind Wong's Market made our whole community take a hard look in the mirror. It wasn't pretty what we saw. But sometimes the good Lord puts something broken in our path not just to test us, but to save us all. The smell hit Sarah Mitchell first. That sweet, sick stench of something gone terribly wrong. Her old Camry was making that grinding sound again, same one Jake kept saying he'd fix when he got around to it. 7 in the morning, still dark enough that the streetlights buzzed their yellow glow over the empty parking lot. Sarah had just finished her 12-hour shift at Methodist Hospital, her feet aching in those white shoes she'd worn for 10 years. Same route home every morning, down Hillcroft, past Wong's Market, where old Mr. Wong still opened at 6 sharp, just like his father had done for 40 years. But this morning was different. The grinding got worse. Sarah pulled into Wong's lot, turned off the engine. The silence felt heavy, like before a summer storm. That's when she heard it. Not quite a whimper, more like the last breath of something giving up. She grabbed the flashlight from her glove box, the one Jake insisted she keep there. The beam cut through the dim morning, landing on the dumpster area. Black garbage bags piled high, some split open, spilling their guts onto the concrete. And there, pressed against the chain-link fence, something that made her stomach turn. A dog. German Shepherd from the look of it, though Lord knows it was hard to tell through the matted fur and filth. The poor creature was skin and bones. She could count every rib from 10 feet away. Dark stains covered its neck, and the way it lay there, twisted and still, she thought it might already be gone. Sarah had seen plenty of suffering in her 20 years of nursing, but this was different. This was deliberate. She stepped closer, her white shoes splashing through puddles of something she didn't want to think about. The dog's eye opened. Just one, the other swollen shut, or worse. That eye didn't beg or plead. It just looked at her, with the kind of patience that comes from learning that humans meant pain. The collar caught her flashlight beam. Good leather, the expensive kind, with a brass nameplate. Sarah knelt down, not caring about her clean scrubs, and turned the tag. Rex. And below that, an address she knew as well as her own. 1247 Maple Street. The Garrison House. Sarah's hand pulled back like she'd touched a hot stove. Bob Garrison? Everyone knew Bob Garrison. Coached Little League for 15 years. Served as head deacon at First Baptist. His construction company had built half the additions in Meyerland. His wife Margaret ran the library reading program. Quiet woman, always wore long sleeves, even in August heat. The dog made a sound then. Just a soft exhale that might have been its last. But its eye stayed fixed on Sarah's face, watching, waiting. Sarah's phone rang. Jake calling. "Where are you, honey? Lucy's asking for her mama." "Give me 10 minutes," Sarah managed to say. "Everything all right?" She looked at the dog, Rex, lying in filth behind a grocery store dumpster 3 blocks from his home. "I found something. Bob Garrison's dog." "Bob's dog? Didn't that go missing a couple months back? He put up flyers everywhere, even offered a reward." "It's here, behind Wong's." Sarah swallowed hard. "Jake, something terrible's been done to this animal." Silence on the line. Then, "You sure it's Bob's?" "Tag says Rex, has his address." "Well, call him then. Let him know." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "I'm taking it to the emergency vet."
"Sarah, that's not our business. Someone tortured this dog, Jake.
burned it with cigarettes, beat it, starved it nearly to death. Another silence. You're saying Bob did that? I'm saying this dog is 3 blocks from home and someone hurt it real bad. She heard Jake sigh. Bring it to the vet if you need to. But Sarah, be careful about making accusations. Bob Garrison's got a lot of friends in this town. After Jake hung up, Sarah looked back at Rex. The dog hadn't moved, except for that labored breathing. But pressed under his paw was something that made her heart twist. A child's stuffed rabbit, pink and dirty, missing one ear. Rex held it against his chest like the last precious thing in the world. That's when she noticed the other items scattered around. A deflated soccer ball, a child's sneaker, a Meyerland Mustang's baseball cap. Rex had been collecting things, children's things. Sarah made her decision. She went to her car, got the old quilt her mother had made that she kept in the trunk. Spreading it beside Rex, she spoke in the calm voice she used with frightened patience. I'm going to move you now. It might hurt some, but then we're going to get you help. Rex didn't resist as she gathered him up. He weighed nothing, maybe 40 pounds when he should have been 70. The pink rabbit fell, and Rex made that broken sound again. Sarah picked up the rabbit, placed it against his chest. We'll keep this safe. She settled him in the back seat. That's when she saw the full extent of it in the dome light. Chain marks cut deep into his neck, circular burns all over his body, legs that had been broken and healed wrong. This wasn't neglect. This was evil, plain and simple. Her phone buzzed. Jake again. Lucy won't eat breakfast without you. Sarah looked at Rex in the mirror. His one good eye was watching her. Tell her mama found a sick dog that needs help, she texted back. Starting the engine, Sarah knew she was about to upset the careful balance of their neighborhood. Bob Garrison wasn't just anybody. He was somebody. The kind of man who got things done, who people respected, who nobody questioned. But as she drove toward the emergency vet, Rex's labored breathing the only sound, Sarah remembered something her grandmother used to say. The devil's best trick is looking respectable. She glanced back at Rex. He'd moved his head just enough to keep that pink rabbit in view. Don't you worry, she told him. Nobody's going to hurt you again. She didn't know then that she'd just made a promise that would cost her family everything, and save them at the same time. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. The emergency vet clinic's doors whooshed open, letting out that sharp smell of disinfectant mixed with animal fear. Sarah's arms trembled under Rex's weight. 40 pounds shouldn't feel this heavy, but dying things always weighed more somehow. Need help here? She called out. A young woman in purple scrubs rushed around the counter, took one look at Rex, and her face went pale. Dr. Thompson, she hollered toward the back. Emergency! They lifted Rex from Sarah's arms onto a wheeled gurney. His eye tracked her movement as they rolled him away, that pink rabbit still clutched against his chest. Sarah slumped into a plastic chair that squeaked under her weight. The waiting room clock showed 7:23. Lucy would be eating her Cheerios now, making Jake count each piece. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything look washed out and tired. Her phone showed 7 missed calls from Jake. She called back. Where in heaven's name are you? His voice tight, controlled, his angry voice. Animal emergency on Westheimer. Sarah, Lucy's been crying for 20 minutes. She thinks something happened to you. Sarah pressed her palm against her forehead. The exhaustion from her 12-hour shift crashed over her like a wave. Put her on. Mama? Lucy's voice small, wobbly. Why did you leave? I found a hurt doggy, sweetheart. Remember how we helped that bird last spring? Same thing. Is the doggy going to be okay? Sarah watched through the exam room window as Dr. Thompson bent over Rex, his face grim. We're trying to help him. Can I see him? Maybe later, baby. You be good for Daddy, all right? Jake came back on. This is crazy, Sarah. You can't just... The collar says Rex.
Bob Garrison's dog.
Silence stretched between them. You sure?
Tag has his address, 1247 Maple.
Through the phone, she heard Jake's coffee mug set down hard on the counter. Bob helps with my electrical contracts. Got me the Miller job. $15,000 project, Sarah.
I know.
If we go accusing him of...
I'm not accusing anybody. I'm getting a sick dog treated.
Dr. Thompson emerged from the exam room, pulling off latex gloves. Mid-50s, gray beard, the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much. He sat beside Sarah. That your dog?
Found him behind Wong's Market.
Dr. Thompson pulled out his phone, started scrolling through photos he'd just taken. See these wounds around the neck? That's from an embedded chain collar, probably choke chain pulled tight repeatedly. These circular marks, cigarette burns. The fractures in both hind legs healed wrong. Means someone broke them and never got treatment. Sarah's stomach turned.
How long?
The injuries are different ages, some weeks old, some months. This is systematic abuse over a long period.
Will he survive?
Maybe. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, infection. But what worries me more... He showed her another photo. These burns are all in places that would be covered once fur grew back. Whoever did this knew exactly where to hurt him without it showing. Sarah stared at the image.
The collar has an address. The owner
is Bob Garrison. I know. He brings his other dog here, a young lab, always perfectly healthy. Dr. Thompson stood. Treatment will run about $3,000 to start. That's with the Good Samaritan discount. Their Hawaii fund, Lucy's college savings, Jake would...
I'll pay.
Dr. Thompson studied her face. You sure about this? Getting involved? The dog was protecting a child's toy when I found him. The vet's expression shifted. I'll need a name for the paperwork. Can't use Rex if there's going to be... complications. Sarah thought of Rex's eye in that parking lot, patient and resigned. Then that tiny movement when she'd picked him up, not quite hope, but recognition that something had changed.
Hope, she said. His name is Hope.
Dr. Thompson nodded, headed back to the exam room. At the door, he turned. Mrs. Mitchell, you might want to prepare yourself. Bob Garrison doesn't take kindly to people interfering with his property. Sarah's kitchen floor felt cold through her jeans at 2 a.m. The dishwasher hummed its rhythm, while Hope lay motionless on the folded quilts she'd arranged in the corner. His breathing came shallow. 22 times she'd counted in the last minute. Too fast. His one good eye stayed fixed on the doorway, like something might come through it. The vet had released him after 8 hours of IV fluids, antibiotics, wound cleaning. He needs constant monitoring, Dr. Thompson had said. Any changes, bring him back immediately. Sarah held out a piece of boiled chicken between her fingers. Plain, no salt, still warm from the pot. Hope's nostril twitched, but he didn't move.
Come on, she whispered. Just one bite.
The stairs creaked. Jake appeared in the doorway, yesterday's work shirt hanging loose, construction dust still in his hair. Any luck?
Nothing. Won't even lift his head.
Jake lowered himself down beside her, knees popping. The kitchen light caught the gray threading through his brown hair. When had that happened? Sarah, you haven't slept in 36 hours.
I'm fine.
You're not fine. You're sitting on our kitchen floor at 2 a.m. trying to hand-feed Bob Garrison's dog. Hope's whole body went rigid at the name. Just for a second, but Sarah saw it.
See that? She said. He knows that name.
Dogs respond to tone, not... Small footsteps on the stairs. Lucy appeared, dragging her stuffed elephant, her dinosaur pajamas twisted around her middle.
Mommy? Hey, baby. You should be sleeping.
Lucy ignored this, padding over in her bare feet. She stopped 3 feet from Hope, tilting her head the way she did when working out a puzzle.
Why won't he eat?
He's scared.
Of what?
Sarah didn't have words for a 4-year-old. How do you explain systematic torture to someone who thinks the worst thing in the world is running out of goldfish crackers? Lucy sat down cross-legged, still clutching her elephant. She studied Hope with that intense concentration children have, like the whole world had shrunk to just this moment. "Maybe he forgot how," she said. Jake and Sarah looked at each other over their daughter's head. Lucy picked up the piece of chicken Sarah had dropped, held it out toward Hope, her small hand steady. "It's okay," she said, using her talking-to-dolls voice. "Food is good. See?" She pretended to take a bite, making exaggerated chewing sounds. Hope's eye tracked her movement. Lucy scooted 1 inch closer, then another. Hope's breathing quickened. 25, 28 respirations. But he didn't pull away. "Lucy, careful," Jake started. Sarah grabbed his wrist, shook her head. Lucy placed the chicken on the blanket, right in front of Hope's nose. Then she started humming. Some tuneless thing from preschool about butterflies or rainbows or both. Hope's tongue emerged, cracked, dry, like old leather. It touched the chicken, drew back, emerged again. The first piece disappeared. Lucy beamed, picking up another piece. "See? He remembered." For 20 minutes, Lucy fed Hope piece by piece, humming that meandering song. Hope ate it all, never taking his eye off her face. "What's his name?" Lucy asked. "Hope? That's a funny name for a dog." "Maybe, but it fits." Lucy yawned enormously. Jake scooped her up, and she didn't protest this time. "Night-night, Hope," she called over Jake's shoulder. Hope's tail moved, just a twitch, barely visible, but deliberate. Jake carried Lucy upstairs. Sarah heard him tucking her in, the muffled sound of their goodnight ritual through the ceiling. When he came back down, his face looked older in the kitchen light. $3,000, Sarah. "I know. That's Lucy's preschool tuition." "I know. And if Bob wants his dog back, look at him, Jake." Sarah pointed to Hope, curled in the corner, bones visible through patchy fur. "Look at those burns, those chain marks." Jake ran his hands through his hair. "Bob coaches Lucas's team. He helped me wire the garage. His wife teaches Lucy at library story time. And people like that don't do this kind of thing." "Then how do you explain it? Maybe the dog ran away, got hurt after..." Hope whimpered. First sound he'd made besides breathing. Sarah looked down. He was asleep, but his legs twitched, running from something in his dreams. His lips pulled back, showing teeth, but no sound came out. Like he'd learned not to cry out even in sleep. "Dogs don't give themselves cigarette burns in perfect patterns," Sarah said. The kitchen clock ticked toward 3 a.m. Jake stood, knees cracking. "I've got the Miller project at 7. Bob's supposed to inspect the work." So what do I tell him if he asks about his dog?" Sarah looked at Hope, twitching through nightmares. "Tell him the truth. I found a dying dog and took it to the vet. And if he wants to see him, then he can explain the cigarette burns." Jake headed for the stairs, stopped at the doorway. "Sarah, Bob Garrison isn't someone you want as an enemy. What kind of person tortures an animal?" "I don't know, but I know Bob's got connections all over Houston. The police chief, city council, half the judges in Harris County." Sarah stayed on the floor after Jake went to bed. Hope woke every few minutes, that eye snapping open, checking the doorway. Around 4 a.m., he crawled closer to her. Not touching, but close enough she could feel the heat from his fevered body. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Heard you found a dog. We should talk. BG." Sarah's blood went cold. She looked at Hope, who was watching her now, fully awake. Another text. "I know you have him." Then another. "That's my property you're holding." Hope pressed against her leg, shaking. Sarah put her hand on his head, felt the ridges of old scars under thin fur. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She didn't answer. It rang again. and again. On the fourth ring, she picked up. "Mrs. Mitchell," Bob Garrison's voice, smooth as honey over gravel. "I believe you have something of mine." 2 weeks had passed since that phone call. Sarah watched Hope take kibble from the bowl, still slow, still careful, but eating. 10 pounds heavier already. The wounds on his neck had scabbed over, dark and rough. She refreshed the Meyerland Facebook page on her laptop. Her post from 3 hours ago had 47 comments already. Found, German Shepherd, male, thin, injured but recovering. Please contact with proof of ownership. Most comments were prayers and heart emojis, but scattered through them. Looks like Bob Garrison's Rex. That's definitely Rex. Bob's been heartbroken. Thank the Lord someone found him. The doorbell rang. Hope shot under the kitchen table, his whole body flat against the tile. Urine spread in a puddle beneath him. Through the front window, Sarah saw Bob Garrison on her porch. 6'2", shoulders squared in his Sunday khakis despite it being Tuesday afternoon. Margaret stood behind him, purse clutched against her stomach, sunglasses covering half her face even though clouds blocked the sun. Jake emerged from the garage, wiping oil on a rag. He saw Bob through the window, met Sarah's eyes. She nodded. Jake opened the door. "Bob." "Jake." Bob's cologne drifted into the house, something expensive fighting with cigarette smoke. "Appreciate you folks posting about finding that dog." Sarah stepped into view. "Mr. Garrison." "Mrs. Mitchell." His smile showed too many teeth. "Heard you've been taking real good care of Rex." From under the table came the sound of claws scrambling on tile, Hope trying to back further into the corner. "The dog we found was severely injured," Sarah said. "Well, he's been missing 8 weeks. Streets are dangerous for a dog." Bob pulled out his phone, swiped to photos. Rex healthy, sitting proud beside Bob's truck. Then adoption papers from 3 years ago, microchip registration, all legitimate. "That's your proof. I'll take my dog now." Hope whimpered from the kitchen. Not loud, just broken air pushed through a tight throat. "The dog we found has been systematically abused," Sarah said. "Cigarette burns, chain wounds, broken bones that were never treated." Bob's face darkened from red to purple. "You calling me a liar?" "I'm stating medical facts, documented by a veterinarian." "Could have happened after he ran off." Margaret shifted behind her husband. Her sleeve rode up as she adjusted her purse. Yellow-green bruising wrapped around her wrist like a bracelet. "Mr. Garrison," Jake said carefully. "The dog's terrified. Look." He led them to the kitchen doorway. Hope was pressed so far under the table, his spine curved against the wall. A puddle of urine spread beneath him, his whole body shaking. "See?" Bob said. "Aggressive, probably rabid." "He's terrified," Sarah said. "He's my property. Legal papers right here." Bob stepped toward the kitchen. Hope scrambled backward, hit the wall, claws scraping desperately at the tile trying to get through solid wall. Lucy ran in from the living room. "Mama, why is Hope scared?" She looked at Bob. "Did you hurt Hope?" "Lucy, go to your room," Jake said. "But Daddy—" "Now." She ran off, crying. Bob watched her go, then turned back. "My dog, my property. Hand him over or I call the police." "Call them," Sarah said. Bob pulled out his phone, started dialing. Then Margaret spoke, so quiet Sarah almost missed it. "Rex used to love children." Everyone turned to look at her. "Remember, Bobby? How he'd sit with the kids at story time?" "Shut up, Maggie." The words cracked like a whip. Margaret flinched, stepped back. Sarah moved closer to Margaret. "Are you all right?" Margaret wouldn't meet her eyes, but she pushed her sunglasses up for just a second, long enough for Sarah to see the yellow-green bruising around her left eye, matching the marks on her wrist. Bob grabbed Margaret's arm. "We're leaving." "Let go of her," Jake said. "Mind your business." "Bobby, please." Margaret's voice cracked. "You're hurting me." From the kitchen came movement, fast.
Hope burst through the doorway, legs shaking but moving. He positioned himself between Margaret and Bob, head low, a growl building in his chest, not aggressive, but warning. Bob stepped back.
See? Dangerous.
But Hope wasn't looking at Bob. He pressed against Margaret's leg, whining.
She knelt slowly, her hand trembling as it found the scars on his neck.
Oh, Rex, what did he do to you?
Maggie, get in the truck. Margaret's fingers traced the burn marks. Her face crumpled.
That night, she whispered, when Rex got between us. You got the bat.
Shut your mouth.
You hit him, over and over. I begged you to stop.
Bob lunged forward. Hope barked, sharp, warning. Jake grabbed Bob's shoulder, spun him around.
Touch her again, and we're done talking.
Bob shook him off, looked at his wife, at the dog, at Sarah holding her phone.
48 hours, he said. Then I come back with the sheriff.
He stormed to his truck, started it, revved the engine. Margaret stood slowly, pulled a small notebook from her purse, pressed it into Sarah's hand.
I wrote it all down, every time.
Maggie!
Bob honked the horn. She walked to the truck, got in.
They drove away. Sarah opened the notebook. Pages and pages of dates, times, incidents. Her hands shook as she read.
June 15th. Rex between us again. B broke his rib. July 8th. Cigarette punishment. Rex wouldn't cry out. August 2nd. The bat. Thought he killed him. Threw him in truck.
And at the bottom of the last page,
August 3rd. Found Rex at dump, still breathing. Left water. Too weak to lift him. Went back every day. Then he was gone. Thought he died.
Jake read over her shoulder.
This is evidence. Of what? She won't testify against him.
Hope limped back to the kitchen, curled in his corner. Sarah followed, knelt beside him. His whole body trembled. Her phone buzzed. The Facebook post had over 100 comments now. The neighborhood dividing. Bob's been nothing but good to this community. Something's not right here. That dog was always so well behaved.
Sarah Mitchell needs to mind her own business. Then a private message from Eleanor Watts, 2 houses down. I have 3 years of documentation. Bird watching requires good notes. We need to talk. Jake's phone rang. Tom Miller's name on the screen.
Don't answer,
Sarah said. But Jake was already swiping to accept. Tom's voice boomed through the speaker. Jake, what in the hell have you done? Bob Garrison just called. Says you're stealing his dog? Hope whimpered at Bob's name, pressed tighter into the corner. Sarah looked at the notebook Margaret had given her, at Hope cowering in the corner, at Jake's face as Tom Miller continued yelling through the phone. She made a decision. Tell Tom we're keeping the dog, she said, loud enough for the phone to pick up. The yelling stopped. Sarah? Tom's voice, dangerous now. You just cost your husband a $15,000 contract. The line went dead. Jake set down the phone. Sarah, what have you done? But she was looking at Hope, at the way he kept watching the door, waiting for Bob to come back.
The right thing,
she said. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She knew who it would be before she answered.
You just made the biggest mistake of your life,
Bob Garrison said. The line went dead. Through the window, Sarah saw neighbors gathering on the sidewalk, phones out, pointing at their house. And in Bob's truck, parked at the corner where he thought they couldn't see him, she saw the red ember of a cigarette glowing in the dark. Sarah's phone hadn't stopped buzzing for 3 days. The Meyerland Facebook group had exploded. 447 comments on her post, the neighborhood splitting like a ripe melon dropped on concrete. She scrolled through the latest messages while Hope lay beside her on the couch, his head resting on her knee. 20 pounds heavier now, the worst wounds starting to heal, but still jumping at every car door slam. Bob Garrison has done more for this neighborhood than anyone. Shame on you, Sarah Mitchell. Just saw the vet report she posted. Those burns, dear Lord. My daughter is afraid to play outside now. Thanks for ruining our peaceful community. I've seen things. We all have. We just chose to look away.
Jake's phone rang on the kitchen counter. He didn't move to answer it. Fourth call this morning from Tom Miller.
You have to call him back eventually, Sarah said.
No, I don't. Jake stood at the window, watching Lucy play in the backyard under Dorothy's supervision. They'd stopped letting her play in the front yard after someone threw eggs at their mailbox 2 nights ago. The doorbell rang. Hope shot behind the couch, pressing himself into the space between it and the wall. Eleanor Watts stood on the porch holding a cardboard box. 78 years old, wearing her bird-watching vest, binoculars around her neck like always. "May I?" Sarah let her in. Eleanor set the box on the coffee table with the careful precision of someone handling evidence. 43 notebooks, Eleanor said, pulling them out one by one. 3 years of observations, not just birds. She opened one dated last summer. Her handwriting, neat as a schoolteacher's. July 2nd, 2:15 a.m. Bob Garrison in backyard with baseball bat. Dog sounds, distressed. Duration, 4 minutes. July 18th, 8:30 a.m. Margaret at mailbox. Black eye visible. Told me she walked into door. July 22nd, 11 p.m. Loud argument from Garrison house. Dog barking. Then sudden silence. Page after page. Dates, times, observations. "Why didn't you ever call someone?" Jake asked from the doorway. Eleanor's fingers traced the notebook's spine. "Who would I call? Bob plays golf with the police chief. His cousin runs animal control. I'm an old woman living alone. Bob fixes my fence, cleans my gutters. What happens when I become his enemy?" She pulled out another notebook, more recent. August 2nd, 3 a.m. Bob's truck leaves. Returns 3:47 a.m. No dog barking after this date. Sarah's phone rang. Dr. Thompson. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm getting pressure. Bob's lawyer is threatening to sue for privacy violations if I don't retract my medical report." "But you documented—" "I know what I documented. But Bob Garrison donates $50,000 a year to the veterinary college. They're suggesting I might have misinterpreted the injuries." "Misinterpreted cigarette burns?" "I'm not backing down. Just wanted you to know it's getting complicated." Sarah hung up. Through the window, she saw a news van pull up. Channel 2. "They've been calling," Jake said. "I haven't answered." The doorbell rang again. This time Jennifer Walsh from 3 houses down, holding a casserole dish. Behind her, Ashley's mother, the one who'd canceled Lucy's playdate. "We wanted to apologize," Jennifer said. "And to tell you something." They sat in the living room. Hope watched from behind the couch, only his eyes visible. Jennifer's hands twisted in her lap. 2 years ago, Margaret asked me to drive Rex to a vet. Bob was out of town. The dog's leg was broken. "Why didn't she drive herself?" "Bob monitors the mileage on her car, checks the credit cards. She paid cash, begged me not to tell anyone." Ashley's mother spoke up. "My husband saw Bob hit Rex with a shovel last spring. We didn't say anything because Bob holds the loan on our house through his company." More neighbors arrived over the next hour. The Johnsons, who'd heard screaming. The Patels, who'd seen Margaret with bruises. Mike Reeves, who'd noticed Rex getting thinner but said nothing. Each story, the same theme. We saw. We knew. We stayed quiet. Eleanor pulled out her laptop. "I've been researching. Bob's been married twice before Margaret." She showed them newspaper clippings she'd found online. First wife, Linda, divorced after 18 months, moved to California. Second wife, Diane, divorced after 2 years, moved to Florida. "Both filed restraining orders," Eleanor said. "Both withdrew them before the divorces finalized." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. "He's drinking. Really drinking. I'm scared." Then another. "He says he's going to fix this tonight." Jake grabbed his baseball bat from the closet. "I'm going over there." "No," Sarah said. "That's what he wants. Call the police." "And say what? Margaret won't file a complaint?" Through the window, Bob's truck cruised slowly past. He wasn't hiding anymore, just driving by every few hours, letting them know he was watching. Hope crawled out from behind the couch, went to the window, stood there, watching the truck disappear around the corner. Not cowering now, watching, waiting. "There's something else," Eleanor said. She pulled out a USB drive. "Security footage from the strip mall. My nephew works there. August 2nd, 3:23 a.m. She plugged it into her laptop. Grainy, black and white video played. Bob's truck pulling up to the dumpster. Bob dragging something from the truck bed, clearly a large dog, limp, unmoving. Throwing it into the garbage, driving away. "That's attempted murder," Jake said. "Of an animal, but still." "It's evidence," Eleanor corrected, "but only if someone's brave enough to use it." Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. "Don't answer," Jake said, but she already had. "You think you're smart?" Bob's voice slurred with alcohol. "Turning my neighbors against me? You have no idea who you're messing with." "Bob, you need help." "I need my dog back, my property." "You threw him in a dumpster to die." Silence. Then, "Prove it." "We have video." Another silence. When Bob spoke again, his voice was different, colder. "You know what happens to people who cross me? Ask Tom Miller how his first electrician ended up. Ask the last family who tried to make trouble in this neighborhood where they're living now." The line went dead. Jake was already on his phone to Tom Miller. "Tom, it's Jake. What happened to your first electrician?" Tom's voice came through, uncomfortable. "Jerry? He had an accident. Fall from a ladder. Workers' comp wouldn't cover it. Said he'd been drinking. Lost everything. Had to move back to Oklahoma." "Was he drinking?" "Jerry was 10 years sober, but Bob was the only witness and—" Jake hung up. The doorbell rang again. This time, 2 police officers stood on the porch. "Mrs. Mitchell, we've had a complaint. Theft of property." Hope ran to the kitchen, scrambled under the table. Sarah could hear him panting from 20 feet away. "The dog was dying when I found him," she said. "That's a civil matter, but Mr. Garrison has filed a formal complaint. We need to see the animal." They followed her to the kitchen. Hope was pressed into the corner, urinating on himself, shaking so hard his tags rattled against each other. The younger officer knelt down. "Jesus," he whispered, seeing the healing burns, the chain scars. Then louder, "Ma'am, has this dog been seen by a vet?" "Dr. Thompson at the emergency clinic. He has full documentation." The older officer made notes. "We'll need to review everything. In the meantime, the dog stays here. But Mr. Garrison has legal ownership papers, so—" "So he might get him back?" Sarah's voice cracked. The officers exchanged glances. The younger one muttered something about animal cruelty charges. The older one shook his head. After they left, Sarah found Jake loading his nail gun in the garage. "What are you doing?" "Securing the house. Windows, doors. Bob's not stable, Sarah." Through the garage window, she saw Margaret Garrison standing at the end of their driveway. Just standing there, sunglasses on despite the setting sun, purse clutched against her chest. Sarah walked out to her. Up close, she could see fresh bruising on Margaret's neck, partially hidden by a silk scarf. "He's going to kill Rex," Margaret whispered. "If he gets him back. He told me. Said he'll do it right this time." "Then testify. Tell the police." "I can't. You don't understand. Bob has things. Pictures. Threats. I try to leave, he'll destroy me. He's destroying you now." Margaret pulled out a key. "This opens our back gate. If something happens, if you hear something. Rex used to protect me. Maybe you could protect Rex." She walked away before Sarah could respond. Back inside, Sarah found Hope sitting at the window, watching Margaret's retreating figure. His tail moved once, a sad acknowledgement. Jake had finished securing the windows. "We should send Lucy to my mother's." "For how long?"
Bob's not going away? Then what do we do? Sarah looked at the evidence spread across their coffee table. Eleanor's notebooks, the vet reports, the video. Margaret's key cold in her hand. We fight back, she said. Her phone buzzed, another unknown number. This time a woman's voice. Mrs. Mitchell? My name is Linda Morrison. I used to be Linda Garrison, Bob's first wife. I heard what's happening. I've been waiting 20 years for someone brave enough to stand up to him. I have evidence you need to see. Sarah grabbed a pen. Where can we meet? Not in Houston.
He has eyes everywhere. Can you come to Austin? When? Tomorrow. Bring the dog. Bring everything. And Mrs. Mitchell? Be careful. Bob's more dangerous than you know. He had another dog before Rex, a Rottweiler named Max. What happened to Max? A long pause. Bob beat him to death with a tire iron the night I finally left. And he told me if I ever talked about it, I'd end up just like Max. The Harris County Courthouse smelled like floor wax and stale coffee. Sarah's heels clicked against marble floors that reflected the fluorescent lights overhead. 2 p.m., courtroom 3B. Property disputes. Jake walked beside her in his only suit, the navy one from their wedding that pulled tight across shoulders built from 20 years of electrical work. His jaw still showed purple-yellow bruising from where Bob had grabbed him yesterday when they'd tried to serve the protective order. Hope stayed with Dorothy and Lucy. The judge wouldn't allow animals in court unless specifically requested. The gallery was packed. Sarah recognized half of Meyerland sitting in those uncomfortable wooden pews. Bob's supporters filled the left side. Mike Reeves, Tom Miller, the Hendersons, all the people whose mortgages Bob held, whose businesses depended on his contracts. Their supporters sat on the right, Eleanor with her notebooks, Jennifer Walsh looking nervous, Dr. Thompson in the back row. The divide ran down the center aisle like someone had drawn a line. Bob sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, Richard Coleman, the one from the billboards, the one who'd gotten 3 drunk drivers acquitted last year. Bob wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Jake made in a month. Margaret sat behind him in a high-necked blouse that didn't quite hide the finger marks on her throat. Sarah's lawyer, Maria Santos from Legal Aid, looked like she'd graduated law school last week. Her briefcase was held together with duct tape, but her eyes were sharp when she arranged the evidence folders on their table. All rise. Judge Patricia Wilson entered. 60-something, silver hair pulled back, the kind of face that had seen every possible human failing and wasn't impressed anymore. Case 2024-3847, Garrison versus Mitchell. Property dispute regarding one German Shepherd. She looked over her glasses at both tables. I've reviewed the briefs. Let's keep this simple. Mr. Coleman? Coleman stood, smooth as oil on water. Your Honor, this is straightforward. My client has clear documentation of ownership, adoption papers from 3 years ago, microchip registration, veterinary records. The defendants found his lost dog and refused to return it. He presented the papers with a flourish. Everything official, everything legitimate. The dog went missing 8 weeks ago. My client searched extensively, put up flyers, offered a reward. The defendants found the animal, and instead of returning it, they've made wild accusations to justify keeping valuable property. Judge Wilson examined the papers. Ms. Santos? Maria stood. Her voice shook slightly. Your Honor, we don't dispute the paperwork, but we argue Mr. Garrison forfeited ownership through abuse and abandonment. Alleged abuse, Coleman interrupted. I have veterinary documentation which could have occurred after the dog went missing. Judge Wilson raised her hand. I'll hear the evidence. Ms. Santos, call your witness. We called Dr. Michael Thompson. Dr. Thompson took the stand. Maria walked him through the injuries, every burn, every break, every scar. She introduced photos that made someone in the gallery gasp. Dr. Thompson, in your professional opinion, how long do these injuries take to accumulate? Months, maybe years. The scarring patterns show repeated trauma over extended periods. Coleman cross-examined. But you can't prove Mr. Garrison inflicted these injuries? The pattern suggests, yes or no, doctor. Can you prove Mr. Garrison personally caused these injuries? Dr. Thompson's jaw tightened. No. Can these injuries have occurred during 8 weeks on the streets? Some could, but thank you. Maria called Sarah next. She testified about finding Hope, his condition, his terror response to Bob. Coleman smiled during cross-examination. Mrs. Mitchell, you're a nurse? Yes. Not a veterinarian? No. Not an animal behaviorist? No. So your opinion about the dog's trauma is just that. Opinion? I know what I saw. You saw what you wanted to see. A dog to rescue. A villain to blame. Objection, Maria said. Sustained. Coleman continued. Did you attempt to contact Mr. Garrison when you found the dog? I posted on Facebook, but you didn't call him directly, despite the tag having his address? Sarah's mouth went dry. The dog was dying. My priority was medical care. Your priority was keeping a dog that wasn't yours. He returned to his seat. Bob smirked. Judge Wilson looked at Maria. Any other witnesses? We'd like to call Margaret Garrison. The room went silent. Bob's head snapped around. Margaret didn't move. Coleman jumped up. Spousal privilege. Only if Mr. Garrison invokes it, Judge Wilson said. Mr. Garrison? Bob's face flushed red. He whispered urgently to Coleman, who whispered back. The whole courtroom watched. No, Bob said finally. Let her talk. Margaret walked to the witness stand like she was walking to her own execution. The bailiff swore her in. Her voice came out as a whisper. Maria approached gently. Mrs. Garrison, how long have you been married? 32 years. Was Rex your dog too? Bob's dog. But you lived with him? Yes. Can you describe Rex's behavior at home? Margaret's hands twisted in her lap. She looked at Bob. He stared back, his expression unreadable. He was protective. Of whom? Silence stretched. Judge Wilson leaned forward. Mrs. Garrison, please answer. Of me. Why did Rex need to protect you? Margaret's hand went to her throat, touched the bruises there. Bob has a temper. The gallery rustled. Someone whispered a prayer. Did Rex ever intervene? Yes. What happened when he did? Margaret's voice dropped so low, the court reporter leaned forward. Bob would redirect. Redirect? His anger. Toward Rex instead. Mrs. Garrison, what happened on the night of August 2nd? Margaret went completely still. For 10 seconds, 20, she didn't breathe. Then, Bob had been drinking. We argued. He grabbed my arm. Rex got between us. Then what? Bob got the baseball bat from the garage. Someone in the gallery gasped. Bob's supporters shifted uncomfortably. Rex wouldn't move. He just stood there between us. Bob hit him, in the ribs. Rex fell but got back up, still between us. What did you do? I begged him to stop. Did he? No. He kept hitting Rex until Rex couldn't get up anymore. Then what? Bob dragged Rex to his truck, said he was taking out the trash. I thought he killed him. Maria let the silence stretch. Then, Mrs. Garrison, would you remove your sunglasses? Bob half rose. Coleman grabbed his arm. Margaret's hand shook as she reached up. The glasses came off. Her left eye was swollen nearly shut. Purple-black bruising extended to her temple. Older, yellow bruises layered underneath. The courtroom erupted. Judge Wilson banged her gavel. Order! When did that happen? Maria asked. Last night, after Bob found out I was listed as a witness. Bob shot to his feet. You lying! Mr. Garrison, Judge Wilson's voice cut through. Sit down or I'll have you removed. Bob sat, fists clenched. Maria continued.
Mrs. Garrison, are there other instances of abuse? Objection, Coleman shouted. Relevance? Goes to pattern of behavior, Maria said. I'll allow it. Margaret pulled out a small notebook from her purse. I documented everything. 3 years of incidents. She read. June 15th. Bob broke Rex's rib when he protected me. July 8th. Cigarette burns for barking. July 22nd. Baseball bat again. Page after page. Dates.
Incidents. Violence. The courtroom door opened. Eleanor Watts entered with her laptop.
Your Honor, I have security footage from the night of August 2nd.
Coleman objected. This is highly irregular. I'll allow it, Judge Wilson said. Eleanor connected the laptop to the court's system. Grainy footage played on the monitor. Bob's truck at the dumpster. Bob dragging Rex's limp body, throwing him in the garbage, driving away. The timestamp clear. August 2nd, 3:23 a.m. The courtroom went silent. Judge Wilson looked at Bob. Mr. Garrison, do you have an explanation? Bob stood. That dog was dead. I was disposing of remains. Then how did Mrs. Mitchell find him alive? I thought he was dead. So you threw your beloved pet in a dumpster without checking? Bob's face went purple. He was my property. I can do what I want with my property. The words hung in the air.
Judge Wilson's expression didn't change. Including abuse it? Never, Mr. Garrison, I've seen enough. While you have documentation of ownership, the evidence strongly suggests abuse and abandonment sufficient to terminate ownership rights. The dog remains with the defendants. Bob slammed his hand on the table. You can't! I just did. Furthermore, given Mrs. Garrison's visible injuries and testimony, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. She looked at Margaret. Ma'am, there are resources available. Bailiff, please provide Mrs. Garrison with domestic violence support information. Bob lunged toward Margaret. You stupid! 2 bailiffs intercepted him, dragged him back. Coleman whispered urgently in his ear. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Bob shook off the bailiffs, straightened his tie, walked out through his supporters, who wouldn't meet his eyes. Half of them had already left. Margaret remained at the witness stand, frozen. Sarah approached her. Come with us. You don't have to go back. I have nowhere else. You have us. Margaret's composure cracked. She sobbed into Sarah's shoulder. Jake appeared. We should go. Bob's still in the parking lot. They helped Margaret walk out. Reporters surrounded them immediately. Sarah pushed through, shielding Margaret. In the parking lot, Bob stood by his truck, on his phone. He saw them, started walking toward them. Jake stepped forward. Don't. Bob stopped 10 feet away, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over. You've destroyed everything. My reputation, my marriage. You destroyed it yourself, Sarah said. Bob pointed at Margaret. She's nothing without me. Nothing. Margaret straightened, looked him in the eye. We'll see. Bob took another step forward. That's when they heard the sirens. 2 police cars pulled into the lot. Robert Garrison? An officer approached. You're under arrest. Assault, animal cruelty, violation of a protective order. As they cuffed him, Bob stared at Margaret. You'll regret this. Coleman appeared. Don't say another word, Bob. They put Bob in the patrol car. As it drove away, Sarah saw him through the back window, still staring at Margaret with pure hatred. It's not over, Margaret whispered. He'll get out on bail. He has friends. Money. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you won? Wait until tonight. 9 p.m. Sarah checked the deadbolt again. The chain, the wooden dowel Jake had wedged in the sliding glass door track. Mommy, why is Daddy boarding up the windows? Lucy stood in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed elephant. Just fixing things, baby. The hammer blows from the garage echoed through the house. Jake securing plywood over the garage windows. After the text message, after Bob made bail in less than 3 hours, they weren't taking chances. Hope paced the living room, stopping at each window,
ears forward, listening. He'd been doing this since they got home from court. Margaret sat on the couch, still in her courthouse clothes, staring at nothing. "I should leave," Margaret said for the third time. "He wants me, not you." "You're not going anywhere," Sarah said. Eleanor Watts had gone home to get Margaret some clothes.
Dorothy had taken Lucy upstairs for a bath, trying to maintain normal routine. Hope growled, low, continuous. He pressed his nose against the front window. The motion light clicked on in the front yard. Nothing there. It clicked off, then on again. Jake came in from the garage, sawdust in his hair. That's the third time in 10 minutes. Hope's growl deepened. The fur along his spine stood up. The phone rang. Landline. Sarah never used it anymore, forgot they still had it. She picked up. "Hello?" Breathing. Heavy. Deliberate. "Bob, the police." "You took everything." His voice slurred, drunk but not enough to excuse what came next. "My dog, my wife, my reputation." "You're violating the protective order." "You know what I did to my first dog, Max? Beat him until he stopped moving, then beat him some more." Sarah's hand shook. "The police are tracing this." Landline to landline. Good luck with that. The line went dead. The backyard motion light clicked on. Hope ran to the back door, barking. Not warning barks, alarm, terror. Jake grabbed his baseball bat, Lucy's pink T-ball bat with butterfly stickers, the only one they had. Glass shattered upstairs. Lucy screamed. Sarah ran for the stairs. Jake passed her, taking them 3 at a time. Hope tried to follow, but his injured legs couldn't manage the steep climb fast enough. Another window breaking. Master bedroom. Dorothy's voice from Lucy's room. "Get away from the window!" Sarah reached the hallway. Through Lucy's doorway, she saw Dorothy pulling Lucy away from broken glass scattered across the carpet. A brick lay among the shards. Jake ran to the master bedroom, more glass crunching under his feet. "He's throwing bricks," Jake called. "I can't see him." The lights went out. All of them. The whole house plunged into darkness. Lucy wailed. Hope barked continuously from the bottom of the stairs. Margaret's voice from the living room. "He knows where the breaker box is. He helped Jake install it." Sarah felt her way to Lucy's room. "Dorothy, take Lucy to the bathroom. The window's too small there." "Mommy, I'm scared." "I know, baby. Stay with Grandma." Jake's phone flashlight cut through the darkness. "I'm calling 911. "No signal," he said after a moment. He must have a jammer. The front door handle rattled. Hope's barking became frantic. Then, silence. Complete silence. Even Hope stopped barking. "Sarah?" Bob's voice from outside, sing-song, mocking. "I know you're listening. Send out my wife and my dog. That's all I want." Jake moved to the top of the stairs. "The police are coming, Bob." "No, they're not. Your phones don't work. Your landline's cut now too. And even if someone called them, my buddy at dispatch will say it's a false alarm. Domestic dispute, already resolved." Margaret appeared at the bottom of the stairs, Hope beside her. Even in the darkness, Sarah could see her shaking. "I should go," Margaret whispered. "If I go, he'll leave you alone." "No," Sarah said. "He'll hurt Lucy. I couldn't live with that." The kitchen window exploded. Hope launched himself toward the sound, vanishing into the darkness. They heard him snarling, glass crunching under his paws. "That dog always was stupid." Bob's voice came from a different spot now. He was circling the house. "Always getting between me and what I wanted to hit." Another window, the dining room. "How many windows you got, Jake?" "I counted 12, plus the sliding door. That's my favorite. Safety glass. Makes a beautiful sound when it shatters." Jake started down the stairs. "Sarah, get everyone in our bedroom closet. It's the only room without windows." "What are you doing?" "Going outside." "That's what he wants." "No, he wants to terrorize us first, make us suffer." The sliding door exploded. Not just cracked, completely destroyed.
The safety glass held together, but the entire panel collapsed inward. Bob's silhouette appeared in the opening. Hope charged from the darkness. 60 pounds of protective fury slammed into Bob, jaws clamping onto his arm. Not the careful hold from before. This was desperation. Protection. Bob screamed. The bat in his other hand, he'd brought his own, swung down. It connected with Hope's shoulder. The dog yelped but didn't let go. Another swing. Hope's legs buckled, but his jaw stayed locked. "Get off me!" Jake rushed down the stairs.
The two men collided, went down on the glass-covered floor. The bat skittered away. Sarah grabbed Dorothy's arm.
"Get Lucy and Margaret to the bedroom closet. Lock the door." "What are you— Go!"
Sarah ran down the stairs. In the darkness, she could barely make out Jake and Bob rolling on the floor. Hope had released Bob's arm but was trying to get back up, his back legs not working right. She grabbed the pink T-ball bat Jake had dropped. Bob threw Jake off, scrambled to his feet. Blood ran from his arm where Hope had bitten him. "You're going to pay for that," he said to the dog. Hope tried to stand. Fell. Tried again. Bob picked up his bat.
"No!"
Margaret's voice from the stairs. She hadn't gone to the closet.
"Bobby, please. I'll come with you. Just leave them alone."
Bob turned toward her. Too late for that, Maggie. Blue and red lights flooded through the broken sliding door. Not just one patrol car, 3, 4, 5. Bob spun toward the lights. "What? We called them 20 minutes ago," Eleanor Watts said from the backyard. "Before you cut the phones, every neighbor on this street called, even your supporters." Police officers poured through the ruined sliding door, guns drawn. "Drop the bat, now!" Bob dropped it. "This is my house. They stole—" "Robert Garrison, you're under arrest. Breaking and entering, violation of protective order, assault." "That dog attacked me." Bob held up his bleeding arm. "The dog defended its family from an intruder," the officer said, cuffing him. As they dragged Bob toward the door, he turned back, looked at Margaret. "This isn't over."
"Yes, it is," Margaret said quietly. "I'm done being afraid of you."
They took Bob away. More officers arrived, documenting damage, taking statements. Paramedics examined Jake's split lip, Hope's injuries. "The shoulder's re-injured," one said about Hope. "He needs a vet." Hope lay on his side, breathing hard, but his tail moved when Lucy ran to him.
"You saved us," she whispered. "You're the bravest dog ever."
Sarah knelt beside them. The house was destroyed. Windows broken, glass everywhere, their sanctuary violated. But they were alive, together. Her phone, suddenly working again, buzzed with texts. The whole neighborhood asking if they were okay, offering help. Even Mike Reeves. "Bob's gone too far. We were wrong. What do you need?" Margaret stood in the destroyed living room, looking at the devastation. "He'll make bail again. His lawyers—" "No." The officer taking statements interrupted. "Not this time. Home invasion with a weapon, assault. This is different. Judge won't grant bail twice." Eleanor appeared with a box of garbage bags and work gloves. Behind her, Jennifer Walsh with plywood. The Patels with a shop vac. The Johnsons with sandwiches and coffee. "Figured you could use help," Eleanor said. Within an hour, 20 neighbors were there, cleaning glass, boarding windows. Even Tom Miller showed up with a crew to fix the electrical. "I'm sorry," he told Jake, "about the contract, about everything. Bob fooled us all." As they worked, Sarah noticed Margaret on the phone, her lawyer, from what Sarah could hear. Divorce papers, restraining orders, asset freezing.
"He can't hurt anyone anymore," Margaret said when she hung up. "But there's something else. Something I haven't told anyone."
She pulled out her phone, scrolled to a hidden folder.
"Videos," she said. 43 videos of Bob hurting Rex, 2 years' worth.
"I was building evidence for when I got brave enough." Sarah looked at the timestamp on the first video. 2 years ago. All that time, Margaret had been planning, waiting.
"Why now?" Sarah asked. "Why speak up now?"
Margaret looked at Hope, wrapped in blankets on the couch,
Lucy reading him a story about brave knights. Because you showed me broken things could be saved. That hope, the feeling, and the dog could survive the worst darkness. Her phone rang. She looked at the caller ID, frowned. Harris County Jail. She declined the call. It rang again immediately. This time she answered, put it on speaker.
Maggie?
Bob's voice, not slurred now, cold sober, cold furious.
You're going to drop the charges.
No.
I have friends, resources, even from in here.
Your friends are done with you, Bobby. Coleman dropped you as a client an hour ago. Silence.
How did you? He's my lawyer now. Funny how quickly people switch sides when they see video evidence of systematic torture.
You recorded?
Everything. Every beating, every threat, every time you hurt Rex for protecting me.
The line went dead. Margaret looked at Sarah. He knows now that I've been collecting evidence for years. That changes things. What do you mean? Margaret's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She read it, and her face went white. She showed it to Sarah. Your sister's address in Austin. Pretty house. Shame if something happened to it.
The emergency vet clinic at 2 a.m. looked different than it had 3 months ago. Same fluorescent lights, same ammonia smell, but now Sarah knew every crack in the waiting room tiles. Dr. Thompson worked over Hope in the examination room, checking the re-injured shoulder. Deep tissue trauma, he said through the glass, but no breaks. He's lucky. Lucky. Sarah looked at Hope lying still on the table, breathing shallow but steady. Margaret sat beside her, clutching her phone like it might explode. The threat about her sister in Austin had come 2 hours ago. They'd called Austin PD, but what could they really do? Jake paced the waiting room, his jaw purple-black from Bob's fist. Coleman's here. Richard Coleman entered, the lawyer who'd defended Bob just this morning, now wearing jeans and a wrinkled shirt instead of his $1,000 suit. His face looked haggard. Mrs. Garrison. Excuse me, Ms. Walsh. He'd already started using Margaret's maiden name. We need to talk. About what? Margaret's voice came out flat. About Bob's connections, the ones he's calling from jail. Coleman pulled out a folder. I defended Bob for 3 years. Thought he was just a successful businessman with a bad temper. But after seeing those videos you took, he spread papers on the coffee table. I did some digging. Bank statements, property deeds, corporate filings. Bob owns more than construction, Coleman said. He has silent partnerships in half the businesses in Meyerland, holds mortgages on 40 homes, and these? He pulled out more papers. Payoffs to city officials, police, judges. Jake stopped pacing. You're saying Bob owns the neighborhood? I'm saying Bob owns people, and those people are scared. He's been operating like this for 20 years. Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, then recognized the Austin area code. Mrs. Mitchell? A woman's voice, older, cautious. This is Linda Morrison, Bob's first wife. I heard what happened tonight. Sarah put it on speaker. How did you... It's on the news. Bob arrested for home invasion. I've been waiting 20 years for this call. Margaret leaned forward. Linda? It's Margaret. His last wife. Silence. Then, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. How bad did it get? Margaret touched the fading bruises on her throat. Bad enough? Is the dog alive? The news said he hurt another dog. Hope's being treated. He protected us. Linda's voice cracked. Bob had a Rottweiler when I was married to him. Max. Bob killed him the night I tried to leave. Beat him to death with a tire iron in front of me. Said that's what happened to things that got in his way. Coleman was taking notes. Would you testify to that? I'll do more than testify. I have pictures, medical records, and something else. Bob's first business partner, Frank Morrison, disappeared in 1995, right after he tried to buy Bob out. Disappeared? Bob said Frank ran off with company money, but Frank's wife always believed Bob did something. She hired a private investigator. Never found proof, but what? The PI found Frank's car at a salvage yard in Pasadena. Bob's cousin owned that yard. It was crushed the day after Frank disappeared. Jake sat down hard. You're saying Bob might have... I'm saying Bob's dangerous in ways you don't understand yet. The examination room door opened. Dr. Thompson emerged, pulling off gloves. Hope's stable. The shoulder will heal, but he needs rest. Complete rest. No guard dog activities for at least 2 weeks. Can we take him home? Sarah asked. What's left of your home, yes. But here's the thing. Dr. Thompson pulled up a chair. I've been checking Hope's microchip history. Before Bob adopted him, Rex was at the shelter. Before that, he belonged to a family in Corpus Christi. He showed them the records on his tablet. The Hendersons, not your neighbors, different family. They surrendered Rex after he bit someone. Margaret straightened. Rex never bit anyone before Bob. According to this, he bit an intruder who broke into their house, protected their child. The court ordered him surrendered or euthanized. They chose surrender. Sarah looked at the records. So Rex was always protective? That's why Bob chose him, Margaret said quietly. He saw Rex's history at the shelter, said he needed a dog that would take a hit. I thought he meant guard the house. Coleman's phone buzzed. He looked at it, frowned. Bob made another call from jail to someone named Marcus Webb. Margaret went pale. Marcus is Bob's enforcer, collects debts, convinces people to sell property they don't want to sell. We need to get you somewhere safe, Coleman said. Where? Bob knows where my sister lives, knows where Sarah's family is, knows everything. The clinic door chimed. A woman entered, thin, blonde, walking with a slight limp, maybe 45. Behind her, an older woman with gray hair using a walker. Margaret gasped. Diane? Bob's second wife, the one who disappeared to Florida. Hello, Margaret. Diane's voice was soft but steady. Linda called me, said it was time. The older woman spoke. I'm Helen Morrison, Frank Morrison's widow. Mr. Coleman called me. They sat in the waiting room, 5 women whose lives Bob had destroyed in different ways. Coleman pulled out his phone, started recording. This is witness testimony regarding Robert Garrison. Please state your names. One by one, they spoke. Linda about Max's death and Frank Morrison's disappearance. Diane about 2 years of escalating violence, the pets Bob killed, the night she fled with only her car keys. Helen about her husband's business disputes with Bob, his fear in the final weeks, the car that vanished. Margaret pulled out her phone. These are the videos, 43 of them. She played one, Bob's voice clear. You think that dog can protect you? Watch this. The sound of impact, Rex's yelp, another impact. Dr. Thompson had been listening from the doorway. I'll testify too, about every injured animal Bob brought in over the years, always with explanations. Always paid cash. Sarah's phone buzzed. Jake's mother, Dorothy. Lucy's asking for Hope. When are you coming home? Home. Their house with its boarded windows, glass still in the carpet, Bob's presence lingering like smoke. We should go, Sarah said. They loaded Hope carefully into the car. He was awake but groggy, his tail managing one weak thump when he saw Margaret. As they drove through the dark streets, Coleman following in his BMW, Linda and Diane in a rental car behind, Sarah noticed something. Every house on their street had porch lights on. At 3 a.m. Every single one. They pulled into the driveway. The neighbors emerged, Eleanor, Jennifer, the Patels, even Mike Reeves, all holding baseball bats, golf clubs, whatever they had. We've been taking shifts, Eleanor explained, watching your house. Bob's got friends, but so do you. Inside, Dorothy had cleaned what she could. Lucy ran to them, threw her arms around Hope's neck as Jake carried him to his blankets. Is the bad man gone forever? Lucy asked. Before anyone could answer, Coleman's phone rang. He listened, his face changing. Bob made bail again. Different judge. One of his friends. Margaret sank onto the couch. He's out? Gets worse. He's filed for emergency custody of Rex. Claims the dog is valuable property worth $50,000. Says you're hiding assets in the divorce. But the judge ruled. Different jurisdiction. His lawyer, new one, filed in Fort Bend County. Hearings tomorrow at 10 a.m. Sarah looked at Hope, sleeping now with Lucy curled beside him, both of them trusting the adults to keep them safe. He won't stop, Margaret said. Even from prison, he won't stop. He has too much money, too many connections.
Then we stop him, Linda said from the doorway. All of us. Together. How? Helen Morrison spoke up. My husband's business records. I kept them all. Every transaction with Bob. Some of them weren't legal. Tax fraud, money laundering. Things the IRS would find very interesting. Coleman stood. That's federal. Bob's local connections can't help him with federal charges. You'd help us? Margaret asked him. After defending him? I defended a man I thought was just difficult, not a monster. Coleman pulled out his laptop. I know where all his bodies are buried, figuratively speaking. Maybe not just figuratively, Helen said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Frank's car wasn't empty when it was crushed. The PI found blood evidence. DNA testing wasn't available then, but now. Through the window, Sarah saw headlights. A truck driving slowly past.
Not Bob's. He was in jail. But someone watching. The truck stopped at the corner, engine idling. Jake noticed too. Coleman, how many people does Bob have on his payroll? Enough, Coleman said. But here's the thing. They're loyal to money, not Bob. If his assets are frozen, if federal investigation starts, they scatter like roaches, Diane finished. The truck moved on, but Sarah knew it would be back. Margaret stood, walked to where Hope slept, knelt beside him. You protected me so many times. Now it's my turn. She looked at the other women. I have something else. Bob's computer passwords, all of them. He thought I was too stupid to remember numbers. Coleman's eyes widened. You can access his files? Everything. Business records, offshore accounts, and a folder labeled Insurance. Insurance? Pictures, videos, of all the city officials he's been bribing. What do you think would happen if those became public? The room went quiet. Through the broken sliding door, temporarily covered with plywood, Sarah heard a dog barking somewhere in the distance. Not Hope. He was sleeping peacefully for once. Then she realized something that made her blood turn cold. Margaret, you said Bob has connections at the jail? Yes, why? How long has he been out on bail? Coleman checked his phone. 2 hours? And he hasn't called? Hasn't threatened? After what Margaret just revealed about the passwords? Everyone looked at each other. Jake moved to the window. The street was empty except for porch lights. Where is he? Sarah whispered. That's when they heard it, from the backyard. The sound of the plywood being pried off the broken sliding door. The plywood cracked. Not Bob. The police had him surrounded at a motel 6 miles away. Coleman's phone lighting up with updates from his contact at the department. The sound came from Eleanor, prying off the temporary covering with a crowbar. Sorry, she said through the gap, but you need to see this. The morning sun streamed through the opening. 3 months had passed since that night of breaking glass. The yard looked different now. Fresh grass where Hope had worn paths during his recovery. New flowers Margaret had planted along the fence. Hope stood steady on all 4 legs, his coat glossy black and brown, the shine of health. 78 pounds of muscle and sinew, no longer the skeleton Sarah had found behind Wong's market. Only if you looked close could you see the scars beneath the fur. Come on, Eleanor said. The whole neighborhood's waiting. They walked outside. Sarah, Jake, Margaret, and Hope. Lucy rode on Jake's shoulders, her hands tangled in his hair. The street was packed. Cars lined both sides, people on every lawn. But not for them. For the news crews setting up at the courthouse 6 blocks away. Bob's federal trial, day 1. Margaret wore the navy suit she'd bought with her first paycheck from the library. They'd promoted her to head of children's services after the story broke. She'd testified before the grand jury, shown them the 43 videos, the financial records she'd pulled from Bob's computer before the FBI seized it. "You don't have to go," Sarah said. "Yes, I do." Margaret's hand was steady as she adjusted her collar, covering the last fading marks. Linda came from California, Diane from Florida, Helen from wherever she's been hiding. We all need to face him. Hope pressed against Margaret's leg. He did that still, positioned himself between her and any perceived threat. But different now. Not desperate protection born of trauma, but chosen loyalty. They drove to the courthouse in 2 cars. Hope sat in the back with Lucy, who read him stories from her picture book about brave dogs. He listened with that patient expression, tail swishing against the leather seats. The federal courthouse was nothing like the county building where they'd fought over custody. Marble columns, metal detectors, U.S. Marshals instead of bailiffs. Bob had been held without bail for 3 months after they'd found Frank Morrison's remains exactly where Helen had suspected, buried beneath the foundation of Bob's first construction project. The courtroom was smaller than expected. Judge Catherine Brooks presiding, brought in from Dallas, no connections to Houston's network. The gallery divided again, but different this time. Bob's side had only 3 people, his brother from Oklahoma, 2 business associates who hadn't been indicted yet. Their side overflowed. Every woman Bob had hurt, every neighbor who'd finally spoken up, Dr. Thompson, even Mike Reeves, who'd become an unlikely advocate for domestic violence awareness after realizing how blind he'd been. Bob entered in shackles, orange jumpsuit. 3 months in federal custody had changed him. Thinner, grayer, the swagger gone. But his eyes still held that rage when they found Margaret. The prosecutor, Janet Silva, was a small woman with a voice that carried. She laid out the case methodically. Tax fraud, money laundering, bribery, animal cruelty, domestic violence, murder. The defendant built an empire on fear, she said. But empires built on fear always fall when one person finds courage. She played the first video. Bob's voice filled the courtroom. "You think that dog can protect you?" The sound of Rex yelping. Margaret's sobs in the background. Someone in the gallery walked out. Then another. Even Bob's brother looked away. Linda testified first. Spoke about Max, the Rottweiler Bob had killed. About Frank Morrison's fear in those final weeks. The jury, 7 women, 5 men, took notes. Diane testified about the escalation, the pets that disappeared, the night Bob held her head underwater in the bathtub until she passed out. Helen Morrison testified about her husband, the threats, the car that vanished, the body they'd found with a crushed skull, dental records the only identification. Then Margaret. She walked to the witness stand steadily, spoke clearly. 43 videos, 3 years of documentation, every beating, every threat, every moment of terror. "Why didn't you leave?" the prosecutor asked gently. "Where would I go? He owned the police, the judges. My family lived states away. He said he'd kill Rex if I left. Then he'd kill me." What changed? Margaret looked at Sarah in the gallery. "Someone showed me that broken things could heal, that hope, the feeling, and the dog could survive the worst darkness." Bob's new lawyer, a public defender, tried to cross-examine. "Mrs. Garrison, Ms. Walsh, you stayed for 30 years. You must have benefited from the lifestyle." "I stayed because I was terrified. I benefited from nothing but survival." "These videos could be staged." "Then stage Rex's broken bones. Stage my hospital records. Stage Frank Morrison's skull fracture." The defender sat down. On the 3rd day, an unexpected witness. Marcus Webb, Bob's enforcer, had flipped. testified about the beatings he'd administered on Bob's orders, the properties he'd convinced people to sell, the night Bob had called him about Frank Morrison. He said Frank had become a problem, said to meet him at the construction site. What happened there? Bob had already handled it, told me to help pour the foundation, said Frank was part of the foundation now. Bob shot to his feet. You lying piece of... The marshals restrained him. Judge Brooks had him removed, said he could watch on video from a holding cell. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, Judge Brooks allowed victim impact statements. Linda spoke about 20 years of nightmares. Diane about therapy, medication, the limp she'd have forever from the night Bob threw her down the stairs. Helen Morrison held a photo of her husband.
Frank was a good man. He deserved to grow old, to meet his grandchildren. Bob took that.
Margaret stood last, but she didn't speak about herself.
I want to talk about Rex, about Hope. He's here today.
The judge raised an eyebrow. The dog is here?
Outside, with his family.
Bring him in. Sarah led Hope into the courtroom. He walked confidently, tail high. No fear of the federal building, the crowds, the formality. Lucy held his leash, though he needed no restraint. Hope saw Bob on the video monitor. Bob was back in the courtroom now, in shackles. The dog's ears went forward, but he didn't cower, didn't shake, just watched with those brown eyes that had seen the worst and survived.
This dog, Margaret said, stood between Bob and me hundreds of times, took beatings meant for me, never once failed to protect me, even when it meant broken bones, even when it meant being thrown away to die. She knelt beside Hope. He taught me courage, and when Sarah Mitchell found him nearly dead, when she refused to give him back despite Bob's threats, she taught the whole neighborhood courage. Judge Brooks looked at Bob. Mr. Garrison, you've been found guilty of murder, tax fraud, money laundering, domestic violence, animal cruelty, and witness intimidation. Under federal sentencing guidelines, I could give you life. Bob's face showed nothing. But I'm going to be specific. 25 years for murder, 10 years for fraud, 5 for money laundering, 5 for domestic violence, 2 for animal cruelty, to run consecutively. That's 47 years, Mr. Garrison. You'll be 94 when you're eligible for release. Bob's composure finally cracked. You can't. I can, and I have. Marshal, remove the defendant. As they dragged Bob out, he turned to Margaret one last time. But she wasn't looking at him. She was kneeling beside Hope, whispering something in his ear. Outside the courthouse, the media surrounded them. But Sarah noticed something more important. The Meyerland neighbors had come. All of them. Even the ones who'd supported Bob initially. We wanted to apologize, Tom Miller said. For not seeing. For not helping. We see now, Jennifer Walsh added. The neighborhood's different. We're different. They were. In the months since Bob's arrest, Meyerland had transformed. Eleanor ran workshops on recognizing abuse. Dr. Thompson provided free veterinary care for pets of domestic violence survivors. The neighbors checked on each other. Really checked, not just polite waves. Jake's business had exploded. Turns out people wanted an electrician who'd stood up to Bob Garrison. He'd hired 3 crews, bought a new truck. The Hawaii vacation finally happened. Lucy had swum with dolphins while Hope waited on the beach, patient as always. They drove home in comfortable silence. Hope sat between Lucy and Margaret in the back seat. His head rested on Margaret's lap, her fingers gentle in his fur. Where will you go now? Sarah asked Margaret. Actually, Margaret smiled. I bought a house, 3 streets over. Small, but mine. The first thing I've ever owned myself. That's wonderful. I was hoping, could Hope visit sometimes? I mean, he's your dog now, but he's family, Sarah said. Family visits whenever they want. They pulled into their driveway. The house looked different now. New windows to replace the ones Bob had broken, fresh paint Jake had applied with the neighbor's help. Margaret's flowers bloomed along the walkway. Hope jumped out, tail wagging, ran to the backyard gate, then back to them, clearly saying, "Hurry up," in dog language. Lucy laughed, chasing after him. In the backyard, they'd built something special. A garden where the sliding door used to be. Vegetables, herbs, flowers Margaret had chosen. And in the center, a small plaque. Hope Garden, where broken things grow strong again. Hope rolled in the grass, legs kicking at the sky, purely joyful. Lucy joined him, both of them getting gloriously dirty. Margaret laughed, really laughed, not the careful, quiet sound from before. "You know what I realized?" Margaret said, watching Hope play. "Bob was wrong about everything, but especially about Rex. He thought he was getting a dog he could break. Instead, he got one that would never stop protecting others, no matter the cost." Eleanor appeared at the gate with a cake. "Celebration time. Janet Silva just called. They're freezing all of Bob's assets. Every house he held mortgages on will be forgiven. Every debt cleared." "What about his business partners?" 17 more indictments coming. The FBI's calling it the biggest corruption case in Houston history. They gathered in the backyard, Sarah's family, Margaret, Eleanor, slowly joined by other neighbors. The Patels brought samosas. Jennifer Walsh brought wine. Even Coleman showed up, now representing 3 of Bob's victims pro bono. As the sun set over Houston, painting the sky pink and gold, Sarah watched Hope. He moved from person to person, checking on everyone, accepting pets and treats, but always circling back to Margaret and Lucy, his special people. Dr. Thompson arrived with news. Hope's been officially certified. Therapy dog for trauma survivors. He starts visiting the women's shelter next week. Hope seemed to understand. His tail wagged harder. "There's more," Dr. Thompson continued. "I've been contacted by a documentary filmmaker. They want to tell Hope's story. How one dog's courage exposed decades of abuse. How a neighborhood's silence enabled evil. But also, how they found redemption." "What do you think, Hope?" Lucy asked the dog seriously. "Want to be famous?" Hope licked her face, making her giggle. As darkness fell, they turned on the string lights Jake had installed. The backyard glowed warm and welcoming. Margaret sat on the new porch swing, Hope at her feet, finally at peace. "You know what Bob never understood?" she said. "He thought fear made him powerful, but real power is choosing love after you've seen the worst, choosing trust after betrayal, choosing hope after despair." Sarah thought about that morning 3 months ago, finding Hope nearly dead behind Wong's market. How different everything was now. Bob would die in prison. His victims were free. The neighborhood had healed. And Hope, the dog who'd forgotten how to eat, who'd cowered at every sound, now stood confident and strong, ready to help others heal. Lucy had fallen asleep on a blanket, one hand still holding Hope's paw. Jake covered her with his jacket. "Should we take her in?" he asked. "Let her sleep," Sarah said. "She's safe." They were all safe now. Finally, truly safe. Hope lifted his head, ears forward. A sound from the street. They all tensed for a moment. Old habits die hard. But it was just Eleanor's grandson coming to walk her home. Hope's tail wagged. He recognized friend, not threat. "You know what I want to do?" Margaret said suddenly. "I want to get another dog. A rescue. One that needs what Hope needed." "That's brave," Sarah said. "No, that's hope. The real kind. The kind that knows the worst can happen, but chooses to believe in better anyway." A car pulled up. Linda and Diane, who'd extended their stay to see Bob sentenced. They joined the gathering, and Hope greeted them like old friends. "We're starting a foundation," Linda announced, "for domestic violence survivors with pets. Too many stay in abuse because they won't leave their animals. Hope's Foundation," Diane added, "if that's okay." Sarah looked at Hope, surrounded by the women he'd helped save, the community he'd helped heal. His tail hadn't stopped wagging. "I think he approves," she said. The party continued late into the night. Stories shared, tears shed, laughter discovered. Hope moved through it all, a gentle presence, a reminder of survival. Finally, as people began leaving, Margaret stood to go to her new house. Hope walked her to the gate, then sat, watching until her car turned the corner. "He still protects her," Jake observed. "He always will," Sarah said. "But different now, not from fear or trauma, from love." They went inside, Hope leading the way. He did his usual circuit, checking each room, making sure all was well. Then settled on his bed, the one they'd bought to replace the old blankets. Lucy had picked it out, soft, supportive, with hope embroidered on it. Sarah's phone buzzed one last time. A message from Carmen Rodriguez, the woman from Dallas who'd reached out months ago after seeing Hope's story. A photo of her with a golden retriever, both smiling. "Free for 6 months now. Luna and I are safe. Thank you for showing me it was possible." Sarah showed the photo to Hope. He sniffed the screen, tail wagging, somehow understanding. "One more?" Jake asked, seeing Sarah tear up. "One more life saved," she confirmed. Hope yawned enormously, circled 3 times, and lay down. Within minutes, he was asleep, paws twitching as he dreamed. Not nightmares anymore. Sarah could tell by his relaxed expression. Good dreams. Running dreams. She thought about Bob in his federal cell, 47 years, stretching ahead. About the women finding freedom after decades of fear. About the neighborhood learning to truly see each other. But mostly, she thought about that morning behind Wong's Market. The dying dog who'd been protecting a child's toy. The decision to pick him up, despite the cost. "No regrets?" Jake asked, reading her mind as he often did. "None. Not one." Hope's eyes opened briefly, found them watching him, thumped his tail once as if to say, "All is well," then drifted back to sleep. Tomorrow he'd visit the women's shelter for the first time. Next week, the documentary crew would arrive. His story would spread, helping others find courage. But tonight, he was just Hope. Their dog, their family, their reminder that broken things don't stay broken if someone's willing to do the work of healing. Sarah turned off the lights. In the darkness, she could hear Hope's steady breathing, Lucy's soft snores from upstairs, Jake's familiar warmth beside her. They were home. All of them. Finally, impossibly, home. And in his dreams, Hope ran free across endless fields, no chains, no fear, no pain, just joy, just love, just hope. The bronze statue stood in Meyerland Park's center, a German shepherd, alert but gentle, watching over a small garden. The plaque read, "Hope, 2021 to 2034. He stood between violence and victims. He chose love over fear. He taught us courage." Sarah touched the sun-warmed metal. 13 years Hope had lived with them after that morning behind Wong's Market. 13 years of healing, helping, teaching. He'd visited hundreds of abuse survivors. His story had changed laws, saved lives, opened hearts. Margaret stood beside her, her own rescue dog, Faith, at her feet. "He was the best of us. He made us better," Sarah corrected. Lucy, now 17 and headed to veterinary school, knelt to arrange fresh flowers at the statue's base. "He saved us all, didn't he?" "No," Sarah said, watching the neighborhood kids play in Hope Park, their parents chatting on benches Bob's seized assets had paid for. "We saved each other." A little girl ran up to pet Faith. Her mother followed, sporting a fading bruise on her cheek, a tentative smile, the look of someone just beginning to believe in safety. "Is this the Hope Garden?" the woman asked. "The place that helps?" "Yes," Margaret said gently. "You're safe here." As they talked, Sarah noticed the child had a stuffed animal, a pink rabbit, missing one ear.
just like the one Hope had been protecting when she'd found him. Some things come full circle. Some stories never really end. They just transform into hope for someone else. Let me tell you what I learned from Hope and the people of Meyerland.
For 30 years, we lived as polite strangers, waving at mailboxes, never really seeing each other. We thought minding our own business meant being good neighbors. But silence isn't neighborly. It's complicity dressed in courtesy. When Sarah picked up that dying dog, she didn't just save Hope. She held up a mirror to our whole community. We saw our cowardice reflected back. All those times we heard Margaret's cries through thin walls, saw her bruises beneath makeup, watched Rex get thinner. We told ourselves it wasn't our business, but everything that happens to our neighbors is our business, because that's what community means. Now, 5 years later, Meyerland is different. We have potlucks where real conversations happen. Kids play freely because 20 sets of eyes watch over them. When someone seems off, we don't look away. We ask, "Are you really okay?" And we wait for the real answer. Hope taught us that standing between violence and victims isn't just heroic, it's human. That dog with broken ribs still placed himself between danger and those he loved. If a tortured animal could choose protection over self-preservation, what excuse did we have? This story is inspired by actual events but created solely for entertainment purposes. It does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence or harmful behavior. All characters and events are products of the author's imagination, and any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental.